Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Journey with Me podcast, where the journey is greater than the destination. I, of course, am your host, Holly Harris, your journey girl, helping you to manage the middle. And hello and happy Thursday to you guys. I know I was out last week, but I was getting some much needed rest, and it's always a good thing to steal away at times and to break from your normal routine to get the rest that you need. And so that's what I was doing. And so I am back this week with another great episode that I feel will be beneficial to your life and to your journey. All right. Well, with that being said, today I wanted to talk about something that can be very hard to distinguish depending on where you are in your journey. And that is the difference between faith and ambition. Right? Ambition is defined as a strong desire to do or to achieve something, right? It's typically requiring determination and hard work. It's a strong desire for success, achievement, and distinction. So just by reading that definition, you actually need some ambition in order to step out on faith, in order to walk in faith. You have to have a desire to achieve something. It requires determination and hard work, right? And so ambition in and of itself is not a bad thing. However, when our motives lead to compromise, it can become what the Bible calls selfish ambition. Right? James chapter 3 verse 16 says, "For wherever there is jealousy, envy, and contention, rivalry, and selfish ambition, there will also be confusion, unrest, disharmony, rebellion, and all sorts of evil and vile practices." Right? And so that's in the AMPC version, which really breaks it down. But we see here, right, when our motives for wanting to achieve or desiring to do good things is driven by our jealousy and envy for others, where we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? If it's driven by a secret rivalry that we have with someone that we're scrolling through the internet and we're watching their lives and we desire to have what they have, then it can become selfish ambition, right? And it says that there will be confusion associated with that type of ambition. Unrest, disharmony, and rebellion will accompany it. Philippians chapter 2 verse 3 says, "Do nothing from factional motives through contentiousness, strife, selfishness, or for unworthy ends, or prompted by conceit and empty arrogance. Instead, in the true spirit of humility, lowliness of mind, let each regard the other as better than or superior to himself, thinking more highly of one another than you do of yourselves." Right? And so we see here that a lot of what can drive selfish ambition is simply pride, right? It talks about being prompted by conceit and empty arrogance, to be puffed up within ourselves, to be seen as important and attaching our worth to our achievements. And so it's important that we watch out for those things, and how humility and the reliance on the Holy Spirit is really important anytime you're trying to achieve anything, right? Is that you make sure that you are leaning into the Holy Spirit, that you make sure that you are fixed in humility with anything that you try to achieve in order to avoid falling into those pitfalls, right? So now that we have looked at selfish ambition, we've looked at some of the roots of it, as well as what it can produce in our lives. Maybe you're saying to yourself, "Holly, I get what you're saying, but my motives are pure." Right? My desire for success, my desire for achievement is coming from a place of wanting to give God the glory, right? God has told me that this is something that I am to do. But how do I know when to do it, right? Well, let me give you 3 ways you can test to see if it's time for you to step out on faith into that thing. Number 1, is there a demand for it, right? when I think about if there's a demand for it, it reminds me of this episode on The Cosby Show back in the day. If you know, you know, if you grew up during that time, and you remember this episode, Sandra and Elvin, right? They had dropped out of law school and medical school to start a wilderness store in the dead of winter in New York. And I remember them going to their parents and they being like, you want to start a what, a where, and a who? Because they were literally trying to start a store where there was no demand for it. And so I remember an episode where they had them trying out their sleeping bags and all of this. But at the end of the day, the store ended up failing because there just wasn't a demand for it. So basically that insinuates that there is a need to do research. You need to research where you're going, right? You need to have the facts. You need to have the data. And that involves not only research, but meeting with those of similar pasts and passions, getting wisdom from them. This is all groundwork. It's all faith. Because at the end of the day, faith is not about being reckless, but making informed decisions, right? It's where faith meets works. That's the works part. Right? It's not just doing the work, but it's doing the research before the work even begins. So it's so important that we analyze if there is a demand for it, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is there a demand for it from you? Right? And so there can be a demand for it. Everybody and their mama could be doing it, but are people pulling on you for it, right? Is there a demand for you to do this specific thing? And this involves product testing, right? If when you put it out there, is it rejected? Is it something that people are like, no, that ain't you. That's not what I want to see you do. I want to see you do this or whatever. And, you know, you can kind of tread lightly with that statement because sometimes people can't see the vision that you have. So that's another thing that you have to sit with God about. Like if it's something that you really feel intensely in your spirit that it's for you to do, but maybe when you launch out, it's not perceived well. It could just be, again, a timing issue, not a God never wants you to do it type issue. And so, but again, there's that need for product testing, for seeing, right, if what you carry, if what you have to offer, people are demanding it from you, right? Because just because everybody is doing it doesn't mean you should do it. So analyzing that, you know, and seeing if there is a demand for it from you specifically that will help you in the long run determine whether or not it's time to step out into it. And then number 3, do you have the grace for it? Do you have the grace to build what you're believing God for? And this involves 3 things, right? Do you have the time for it? Do you have the time in this season of your life to devote the amount of work that it's going to take in order to build this thing? If not, it's probably not time for it. If you don't have the time, it's probably not time, right? And so it's important for us to analyze if we have the bandwidth to build what we're believing God for in that particular season of our lives, or if it's to be reserved for some other time. The next thing is talent. Are we graced with the talent to succeed at this thing, right? This goes back to there being a demand for it from you, that we may see certain things happening around us and people doing all these great things. And we think, oh, I can do that. But when we actually get into it, we see, oh my goodness, this is a lot of work. Do I really have all of the skills that I need in order to be successful at this? And so being honest with yourself and really sitting down to see, do I have the skills to do this? Do I really have the talent necessary to pull this thing off, right? And so it's important that we are graced to do what we're believing God for. And then finally, treasure, which is money. Do we have the moolah in order to do this thing, right? And so that is so important when it comes to launching a business, when it comes to launching a product. Are the resources available to do this? Or are we going to strap ourselves thin trying to get this accomplished? Is our family going to go without indefinitely because we're trying to chase this thing by faith, right? So we have to examine, do the pros outweigh the cons as it relates to this? Am I going to go broke and bankrupt trying to get this thing started? If so, it's probably not the time to do it. The time should probably be more geared towards fundraising, be more geared towards saving for that in the future, right? And so if we analyze these three things, if there is a demand for it, if is there a demand for it from us, right? And then finally, do we have the grace for it? Are we graced with the time? Are we graced with the talent? And are we graced with the treasure, with the resources in order to accomplish this? And if you examine those things and you're able to check those boxes off, then it's probably time to step out into it, right? And so hopefully this helped you when it comes to stepping out on faith. I know that's a term that we often use in Christendom, if you will, Christianese, just step out on faith. But we fail to consider that encased in faith is wisdom, encased in faith is strategy, encased in faith is making an informed decision, is not just being reckless, but having the answers that we need to proceed, right? I know a lot of times when the stepping out on faith argument is presented in Christian circles, the story of Abraham is always used, right? It's like, well, Abraham, he stepped out and he didn't know nothing, and the Lord just told him to go and he went. But in actuality, the Lord was very detailed with Abraham. You know, he tells him in Genesis chapter 12 to get out of his country, away from his kindred, away from his father's house, unto a land that he would show him. So literally telling him to cut all ties with his family and go to a land that he will show him, right? And then he tells him what he's going to do as a result of his obedience, that he's going to make them a great nation, that he's going to bless them, and his name's going to be great, and he's going to be a blessing. Further on down, as he's passing through the land of Canaan, right, the Lord speaks to him and says, this is the land I'm going to give to you, right? And so it wasn't long after he left, well, I'm not sure, the length that he traveled to get to Canaan, but once he got to that land, the Lord specifically told him, hey, this is the land I'm going to give to you. So specifically, the Lord laid out his plan for him, right? He wasn't necessarily going off of just nothing. The Lord spoke to him right before he even left. He said, hey, this is what I'm going to do if you're obedient. He left, and as he's on his journey, he tells him, hey, this is the land I'm going to give to you. And so the Lord was very detailed with him and told him exactly what he was going to do. And that's exactly what happened, after all of the trials and tribulations that his seed, Israel, went through. Eventually, they did possess that land. But again, it's important that we understand what faith really looks like, that it's not about being reckless, but it is about making an informed decision, especially when you have the information at your fingertips. There literally is no excuse to be uninformed. There is no excuse to not have the steps that it takes to move from this place into what God would have for you. So I encourage you today, go out there and put some work with your faith. God bless you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that this was a blessing to you, and it is something that you can put in your arsenal on your journey to really kind of understand more the timing of where you are on the way to where you're going, right? If you don't mind, hit that subscriber button as well as that notification bell so that you can be made aware anytime I drop a video. If this was a blessing to you, share it with someone, right? Like it, all of the things. If you are listening to me audibly, please don't forget to rate the show because it allows me to be pushed up in ranking so that I can be made more visible to those who need this type of content. Go ahead and follow me on social media at Journey With Me Podcast on Facebook or at Journey With Me Pod on Instagram. You can also follow me personally. I'll have all of that information in the show notes. Again, thank you for hanging out with me. God bless you. And until next time, peace.